in the meantime, starting from this empty blend file. Um, so just to add an armature, and I think I'll do a footstep, um, um, which some people might like. Yeah, I will. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll do that. Solid drawing modes for bones, and actually several options. So you have stick mode, B-bone, envelope, and that's it. Octahedron is the old way. The only difference is that now it's drawn shaded, and it has the same options for drawing modes that all the other everything else does. So you can make it go back to the old, sort of the old wire way of rendering things. You can also have X-ray. You can have X-ray for any object now, not just bones. So you can have X-ray meshes that appear in front of what they're behind if you want. I'll go back to solid for now. X-ray's fine. So this, I'm going to make this bone the child of this one by shift selecting it and doing Control P in edit mode, and I want to keep offset. That's also new. So it's easy to parent things in edit mode in bones as it is in object mode in Blender normally. A lot of the things that we're used to in Blender working for objects now properly work for armatures in both pose and edit mode. So snaps, view centering to a bone, etc., etc. It all works nicely, which is a big plus. You can also subdivide a bone, which I'll do here. So you can keep on doing it. I'll undo that. So here's our top and bottom part of the leg. I'll go to the side view, and I'll just move the knee a little bit forward. So that's the leg part, and we can extrude, and you can use snaps while you're extruding normally. I won't for now, and you can extrude out the foot and extrude out sort of the toe portion of the foot in front. There we go. And so that's sort of the basic geometry bones that the character would have for that leg. You get the upper leg, which I'll call left up leg, and the lower leg. This is the boring part. Left low leg, and the foot stuff. Again, left up foot. Oh, here's something cool actually. You can hit Control C on top of a button, like a text button in this case, and then you can paste that onto a similar button. So you can quickly name things that have similar names. Yeah, most buttons. You don't actually click on the button to type on it. You just hover the mouse over it. You do Control C, and then you go to wherever you want to paste to. Hover the mouse over it. Control V, and it tacks on the .001 ending. So I can just go and rename this to low foot or whatever I want to call it. Okay, so there's two parts of the foot. So this is, ready to be animated in FK, but we'd like to have an IK chain for the foot. And foot IK is kind of interesting because you want kind of two pivots as you work. You want to be able to sort of, stand up on your tippy toes, and you also want to be able to push off, with your heel. And so you have kind of two or even three pivot points that you can think of for the foot. You have the ankle here, which pushes the leg up, and then you have sort of down below it, in this area, you have the heel of the foot, where your foot kind of pivots off the ground, and then you have sort of the ball of the foot, the middle part, when you're just standing on your tiptoes. And you kind of need to have at least that much flexibility in the feet to have some kind of realistic walk or jump or whatever. The rig that I use is based off an old one by I think Lubomir did it in Blender, which is just a nice setup for that kind of thing. The one thing that I didn't used to like about Lubomir's setup was if you pulled with IK normally, if you pull the target too far away, the bones sort of try to chase it and stay sort of hanging in space, not able to reach it. In that setup, everything was cool until you pulled the foot out of range, and the foot would move with the target, and the leg would sort of point, resulting in this stretchy ankle thing, which isn't as bad as it sounds, but I kind of liked to have something that didn't do that and also had easy control over everything. And so I just did a little bit of sort of duplicating and hiding to get the thing to work. So the first thing we want is you want an IK target for the leg up to the ankle point. And I'll just snap the cursor here and add a bone. And you notice adding bones is different than it used to be, and it's actually much more intuitive and nicer. And so you can just move this point, which is selected right away. And so this is just the null. It doesn't matter where that point is. So if you go into pose mode, Control Tab, you can select this bone, which is already selected. Then you can Shift select this bone, and you can do Control I, and it automatically will give you the option to add an IK constraint, in this case with the selected bone. And so now this is yellow, drawn yellow, showing that it has a constraint on it, that it's IK. And you'll notice there's something called chain length here. And if you look at this dotted line, this dotted yellow line, it's showing where the root of the IK is. And if you have a really big armature, that will go all the way up by default to the topmost parent, even if it's not a connected bone. So IK actually works across bones, even the ones that aren't connected. Let me just make sure this is child to this, and we'll see that the yellow line goes all the way to this bone here, which means that if I move this, it affects the hips, which is not the old way of doing things. It would have stopped at this bone here, and this bone wouldn't have moved at all. And in this case, I don't really want that. I kind of want to keep my IK just with the legs and have the hips as a normal parent. And so you can just go into the IK panel here for the constraint and change the chain length, and you can make it end wherever you want. 0 means infinite, 1 means just that bone, and then 2 is that bone and its parents. You'll also notice what's new is that I don't have a null at the end of my chain for the IK anymore. The bone, the IK has a use tip option. We can see checking it on and off. So if you do use tip, it IKs to the tip of that bone, and you don't need like a little extra fiddly bone at the end that you're just using as a null. That's nice. So that's the first step. We have an IK for the foot, which works, as it always has, nicely. Okay, the foot itself we haven't done anything with, so it's rotating around. But the leg and the ankle are working fine. So the next thing, go back into side view, is that we want to pivot off the heel. And pivoting off the heel is as simple as making a bone here at sort of ground level, roughly. So I can snap my hair. I can even just copy this bone over and drag it over here, roughly where I want the heel to be. And deselect that ball and just make it going backwards. This is the little heel pivoting right here. And I don't want it to have any parent. I just clear parent, like normal in Blender, it just works in here. And I want this bone, so let's make sure that worked. Yeah, that didn't work, I guess. Now I want this bone to be parented to this one, so that when we rotate the heel around, it pushes the ankle over. So I'll just do this, and Control P, and I'll keep the offset, and now I have a parenting relationship nicely. And so go back into pose mode, and I can rotate off the heel. Okay, still things aren't working quite right, but we're kind of getting there. So now for the next step. So, by the way, pose mode is now sort of, once you turn it on, it's always on. So I just hit tab and I'm in pose mode automatically. I can still use Control tab to turn it on and off, like we used to be able to, but pose mode is automatic. And that's really, really nice, because if you have multiple things that you're animating in a scene at the same time, like two characters, some objects, whatever, you can just click on what you want to move and move it. And you don't have to worry about clicking on the armature, then going into pose mode, and then moving that one, and then having to get out of that mode and click on the other armature and get into pose mode. It's all natural, which is really nice. And if you want object modes for the armature, you can still get it. You can just hit Control tab and it's object mode again. So back into edit mode here, we would like to have some control over these two bones here so they behave properly. That's the next step. I'm going to move the whole thing down a little bit so you've got sort of more of a bendy leg set up, but that's not really important. Okay, so the next step is doing something about these two bones so they're not kind of floating around in space. So they need to be constrained as well. And I'm going to do a trick. I'm going to go into B-bone mode here because it makes things easier to see for this step, and go into wireframe. And B-bones are kind of cool. You can fatten them and shrink them down just to get a visual effect that you want. And it's really not going to affect how the bones work, just how they look. As for instance, I can make the hips wider by hitting Alt-S and fattening this up. I can make the thigh a bit thicker than the calf, for instance. I can shrink these two bones down so they're super thin. I mean, that's just for visuals, it's really nice. It's also nice because I'm going to make some overlapping bones right now, and I can make them not sort of stick right on top of it so you can't see which is which. So I'm going to just Shift D, duplicate these two bones, and then I'm going to fatten them up. This is very sort of wicked witch stuff. So these are the duplicates, and I'll call this one toes, and I'll call this one ankle. I like to pick nice one-word names for the bones that the animators will actually see, and then the ugly compound things get hidden. And here we'll call this foot, which is what it is. Okay. And so the next step is, well, basically what I want to do is I want to pivot off the ball of the foot, at least optionally. And to do that, I'm going to use this bone. So it's really pointing the wrong way, because right now its root is here and its tip is here, as you'll see if you click on octahedron mode. So I really wanted this particular bone to not point that way. So what I'll do is I'll Alt-P and I'll disconnect this bone from its parent so it doesn't move around with it. So then I can pick this guy and move it. And I'll go into octahedron so you'll see what I'm doing. I'm going to basically snap this point here to here and snap this point to here. So I'm going to flip this bone around. And just a couple of snaps. And it's done. And so now we have that kind of ball of the foot thing. And the foot should move, the ball of the foot should move with the entire foot. So logically it should be parented to this. And we'll keep the offset. And the parenting lines are nice. They reassure us that something happened. And if you go into B-bone, that was just silly. This guy, I think he actually already is a parent. He already is a child of that, which is okay. So, let's go back out of edit mode. Oh, one last thing I'm going to do. We're going to pivot this guy to pivot on the ball of the foot and push the ankle up. So the IK target that is at the ankle should really be a child of this bone, so it pivots with it. So that's the other parenting operation I'm going to do here. And it can be connected or offset. It really doesn't matter. It really is. I'll make it connected for now. Okay, I'll do a little example for you. If you add the bone, and Control P, here's keep offset. It just makes a parenting relationship. Undo that. And if I do Control P and I'll do connected, it connects it to it. And now it's if I go into it's an FK child rather of that bone. So it can't be moved anymore. It can only be rotated. In this case, it doesn't matter because we're not even going to see that bone ultimately. It just has to be a child. So, did I actually do that? Okay. So if I rotate this bone in pose mode, it now rotates. It does this pivoting thing here. So now we just have to get this guy to behave, do something about this guy, and we're done. Okay. So the next thing to do is parent this to this so it doesn't rotate around with that. So now it's behaving. So now I can rotate the ball of the foot and the front part stays sitting down on the ground where it should. And then the other thing is to constrain these guys so the rotations match, and we're done. So this bone right here, you could do even an IK constraint, I suppose, to this one. You actually have a whole bunch of options here. The order is target bone when you're doing this. Bang. And then this chain length thing is the thing that's making things funny. So we'll just give it a chain length of 1. So it's the root. It's a 1 bone IK chain. And this guy can have a copy rotation constraint. And it's the armature's default name. So what I could do here, show you copy C stuff. Okay, I tabbed into it so I get the armature object name here. And I can just copy that, Control C. And then I go back here and I can Control V that here. And then I can select this bone. Right here, and Control C, and then select this bone and paste its name here. Didn't actually have to type anything. So that's basically it. That's the foot setup. So now I can move the foot as a chunk. I'll hide this bone because I don't want to really do anything with it. And basically, the intent is that you rotate these two bones. You don't translate them ever, you just rotate them around. And they give you that little extra ability to pivot on the ball of your foot. And if you pull it too far, you don't break the chain. It just stays, the geometry bones stay connected to each other and you don't get anything nasty. So it's pretty much my existing foot setup that I've used since before this version, but it's using a few new features so I can do it with less bones and in less amount of time than before. Yes? Yeah. Right, right, right. And I'm not even sure I'd call it a hack. It's a very common setup that I've encountered in other programs before. It's nothing I really invented. It's just nice to have and use, and I think it's not too hard to understand. Sometimes if you haven't rigged for a long time, you might forget and then have to think about it a little bit. But it's not too hard to just sort of recover it. It's pretty nice. So that's a foot setup. That's kind of cool. Just to show you a few new features, I can extrude this bone up, and we'll do some kind of spine thing for the character. So we select this bone. I'm going to turn off the manipulators right now because they're annoying me. Shrink it down, and let's maybe make a neck and a head. I'll make the neck narrower and make the head fatter. And I just want to show you something with the B bones. The bones, B bones or not, can be segmented, but you'll only see the segmentation when you're in this drawing mode. And you just notice that there's a number of segments right here, and when you click on it, you can see that the bone has more segments, and you can do that with the neck. So you have these multi-segmented bones, and the cool thing about them is that they're Bezier curves, and they try to sort of smooth the rotations along the chain. And so when I rotate the neck around in this case, it sort of keeps the curvature intact. It's been a comment that I've heard that, oh yeah, but you're not really preserving the length when you do this kind of curve thing, and that's true. So if you have one long bone and you do some really wacky rotations, you get a curve that's really big, and so the spine's sort of stretched out. But you can remedy that by either having more bones if you want to do excessive rotations, and I think it's close enough. But I'm not really into super precision. So if it's close enough, I'm happy. You can do really cool, complicated rigs. Somebody showed me, I think, Hunt House, Peter, who did the catch animation, showed me a really nice spine setup in the old version of Blender that wouldn't break, that wouldn't get too long or too short. And it was really nice. If you have the time, and if he wants to show it to people, you should ask him. It does use about, I think, 9 bones for each spinal bone. So it's really, really so cool to look at, but a little bit more complicated than what I'm showing here. Just so people often accuse me of having too many bones and complex rigs, and that's not true. That guy's the master of that. So another cool thing I'll show as far as new features. By the way, the B bones can deform geometry in this smooth fashion as you'd want, and they probably take longer to calculate because of that, but it really isn't too bad, and I haven't really noticed it actually in terms of having a few B bones in a model didn't seem to make it noticeably slower on my system. The other thing about them that's kind of interesting is that if you have default rotations, and this is not something I like, this is something that happened and I'm not really happy about it, because I usually like to model my characters not in a straight line like that, with already having bends in them. And what happens is the B bones will automatically smooth that, and so you'll model your character and you'll rig it, and if you do this system, you get this default pose deformation. So it deforms right away, even from your model version. It's just something to notice, So if you work so hard on getting the curve of the back and the neck just right in your modeling, and you make the bones in it and you rig it, and then it goes whoop, and it's just a little bit off now, from what you did. So I mean, I can think of only two solutions. One is to model it in this weird straightened out pose, so that, or maybe model it normally and then pose it before you rig it. It's an extra step. The other option is don't care. The other is you can now edit, thanks to the modifier stack, you can edit, I'll show that in a bit, you can edit a mesh deformed by the armature. And so you could do this, rig it, and then say, okay, I don't quite like that, I'll tweak it. I'll tweak it back so it looks nice deformed. There's just a slight problem with that, but really for this setup it's okay. The slight problem is that while you can see it and edit it in its deformed mode, you're really moving the original points wherever they were. So if there are extreme deformations going on and everything's twisted around like crazy by the armature, you can move the point to the left and it'll fly out to the corner of the screen, because that's where it really was, before you deformed it. But in this case, it's not really going to be that bad. You'll notice the point isn't moving quite where your mouse cursor is, but it's pretty controllable. So that's that. Another thing I just want to show about these B-bones that's really cool is they're really nice, actually, even for straight bones. Even maybe nicer. I don't know. So I'll add a bone for a shoulder, and I'll extrude out his arm, and I'll subdivide it. So it's two bones. Subdivide. I had only the point selected. That's why it didn't work. So the cool thing about it is, in a human being, you can twist your joints, and when you twist your joints, it doesn't just twist at the joint and fold over itself like it usually does with bones. It sort of transfers the twist along your arm, and you can use the B-bones for that. You can just give them some segments. I'll do 4 and 4 or 5 maybe, so we can see what's going on. And okay, now I'll show you what's, what if you just do that and you rotate your arm, you get these sort of nice bendy arm setup, which I mean, for old cartoon styles is cool too. You had those old cartoons with the sort of rubber hose animation, they called it, and that's before. I mean, they did it to get fluid motions, and they hadn't quite figured out how to break joints properly. But you don't have to have that. You can take these Bezier handles. This in and out numbers are basically the length of the Bezier handles on each side of the bone. And if you just make that 0, it stays straight. So it just works like a regular bone now. But just to show you what happens when I twist it, we'll go into this widget so I can twist it on the y-axis. And let's zoom in. When you twist, it smooths out the twist along the length of the bone. So that's really awesome. So, that's cool. So, that's just some cool things that that sort of happen to armatures, and just a quick example. I think I don't know if I'm out of time.